Ladies, gentlemen, honourable guests, and present Mayor of Ipswich, Paul Pasali. On this cardinal day of honour, we are gathered here in this great hall of the historical Ipswich Grammar School, confined by the wooden honour boards that exemplify 153 years of exceptional performance, united by admiration and gratitude surrounding the man that they call James Jim Thomas Finimore, to not only commemorate, but celebrate his life in turning the sod anew. Alderman James Thomas Finimore, Mayor, local dentist, husband, son, father, POW, and most of all, an eternal advocate for the prosperity of the city of Ipswich. One who developed a sterling reputation in the Ipswich region as being respectable, honest, and hard-working. One who was forced upon a save-yourself mentality at the hands of belligerents through the eventual undermine of the little cohesion that existed in the Malaya campaign. A product of the unique pedagogy associated with the Ipswich Grammar School. A valiant figure that embodied and was influenced by the virtue of altruism through all facets of his life. Conceived by Thomas and Ave in Albert Street of North Ipswich in 1906, the infant and adolescent Finimore would abide with the pedagogy associated with the Ipswich Grammar School and Ipswich State School, graduating as part of the astute class of 1922. Although little is documented of his primary education, it can be assumed that Finimore's time at IGS under the supremacy of Richard Kerr was highly influential in the expansion of his morale and therefore ideologies. This personal advance signifies the progressional attributes associated with the school on the hill, which in Finimore's grammarian years is denoted by the unanimous vote of cohort to allow women to work for their living, the initial association between opposing genders at a social status in the form of the school dance, the academic accomplishments stated by the chairman of the Lachlan Memorial Committee being that the pupils of the Ipswich Grammar School acclaimed 9 of the 13 existing intellectual recognitions, the breakthrough of offering the applied sciences of chemistry and physics as subjects, the resurrection of the Western Extension to the Great Hall, now referred to as Bradfield House, and even the abolishment of the cadets program. As well as these values of amelioration, the institution that set the precedence of the Grammar Schools Act further impacted on Finimore through its facets that concluded a typical pedagogy. These unique aspects are exemplified through the ethics of the sixth father of the Ipswich Grammar School, Richard Kerr, the staff and community, and even the answering of the roll call in French. Additionally, the virtues of the Finimore family were pivotal in further cultivating the altruistic values of the infant James. Therefore, through the origins of pedagogy and family association, a sense of altruism was implanted within the ideologies of James Finimore, which would be prevalently epitomised in the tribulation of the Second World War. The Second World War, a paroxysm of global conflict that would distort the societal topography through Europe and the continents affixed by the Pacific Ocean. one that directly imposed itself upon the untouched Australia through the devastation of the Darwin bombing in early 1942, and therefore cultivated the altruism of James Finimore and the nationalistic population within the Pacific dispute, which is expressed by the enlistment in the augmenting 2nd AAF as a result of national concern. In specific terms, Finimore offered the altruistic process of conscripting to war numerous times. This trial of admission is exemplified through his initial attempt to enlist in the Navy at the outbreak of war, and in early 1940 in devotion to the Australian Army. Fortunately, however, for war recollection, the native of Ipswich was eventually recognised in 1941, and was commissioned due to his profession as a dental officer with the rank of captain within the 32nd Dental Unit of the 8th Division of the 2nd AAF. As a result of this appointment, Finimore would experience the inadequate ideals of the Singapore strategy, in that there was never any intention for the Australian troops to form part of the garrison. A commitment to a concept that Australia was never prepared for, which was evidenced under the supremacy of Gordon Bennett on the 15th of February 1942. The fall of Singapore, the Australian Army's worst systematic calamity, which would appeal 4,830 prisoners of war, including James Finimore as a medical officer within the Dunlop Force garrison. This concentration of well-being under belligerence would not confine the altruism of the IGS Old Boy, however. Instead, due to his professional training, Finimore would significantly contribute to the disarray within the various institutions along the Burma-Thailand Railway. In definitive terms, his altruism was denoted through a foot-operated portable dental drill, and he even assisted alongside the decorated war hero Edward Weary Dunlop at the Tarsal camp along the River Kwai. In direct quotation about his experiences. In Singapore, we were first notified that we were to become prisoners of war on the 12th of February 1942. The Allied forces capitulated to the Japanese on the 15th of February. I felt very depressed and miserable. Many of us were anxious. The gaol at Changi was chosen as the POW camp. That camp will never be forgotten. In March 1943, I was attached to the Don Force and sent direct to Thailand. My first impressions there were good. Our party moved on to a place called Tarsal, Siam. Impressions here were dreadful. On June 10th, I was the only Don Force officer at Tarsal. A new hospital was formed by the riverbank. During August and September, work continued on the railway, which was getting better, but we observed the results of a blitz with patients coming down from the north in a shocking state. The Japs had a lot to answer for. The hospital grew to 2,777 patients. One day there were 300 patients out and 540 in, the last party to arrive at 10 p.m. I never saw men in a worse shape than at Tarsal. With the influx of men, there was also an influx of officers who spoiled our pleasant mess. The Japanese were just barbarians within a thin veneer of civilization. Therefore, James Finimore is heavily influenced by his altruism even within a division raised to fight the open topography of the Middle East, not the close confines of the Malayan jungle. A true testament to the man, one who is not a hostage to the fate of the belligerents associated with the Second World War. One whose altruistic ideologies heavily influenced his endeavours for the beneficiary of the society directly in correspondence to him throughout World War II. One who would return to the safe asylum of Ipswich in late 1945, where he would accustom himself with the values of orderly life and would soon engage the supremacy of the city where he battled as a boy. Upon return to the domain where his altruism was cultivated, the advanced Finimore would display the heavy influence of his humanitarian values through the resolute progression of the city where his laurels were won. Initially, however, he returned to his professional title of dentistry and upheld the occupation, being self-employed in the Bostock Chambers after graduating from the Queensland School of Dentistry in 1928. In doing this, his recognised endeavour would even be impacted upon by his altruistic virtues, with direct quotation from a previous patient stating, "I loved Mr. Finimore. He was a wonderful man, professional in dentistry." As a result of this local acclaim to his virtues, his political ambitions would be established in becoming Senior Vice President of the Australian Labor Party, thus coinciding to his personality being first encompassed by the community of Ipswich through his rise to supremacy as mayor in 1949. His mayorship, an authoritative role of local entrustment and expectation that exemplified his altruism through his allegiance to the progression of his beloved city. In direct excerpt from Finimore: "As a mayor, I have offered my services to the city of Ipswich. My time will be fully occupied in matters pertaining to the city's welfare." In this devotion to advance is expressed by his innovation of the now prosperous suburbia situated in Brassel and Riverview areas and industrial scope of the Bundamba region in terms of secondary industry. His local everyday societal involvement, such as bodying as chairman of the Horticultural Society and committee man of the Queensland Pastoral and Agricultural Society, and even being confronted with the adversity of being expelled from his local ALP branch following his vote on independent reform in his same years as election. However, it was the unopposed unanimous re-election of the independent Finimore in 1952 that would definitively display the impact of his altruism under the expectation of supremacy. During this second period of unprecedented local primacy, the native of Ipswich would express the communal ideals from his position hierarchy, and thus undeniably appease the voice of his hometown. Altruism, which is evidenced through his cultivation of the Ipswich Historical Society, societal support for churches, a communal sports complex to allow physical development to manifest itself along organised lines, the initial aged care facility and system within Australia under a duty to provide for the aged, and even the addition of a local street light to account for the safety of civilians. In doing this, Finimore would progress the largest event in the city of Ipswich's rich history, being that of the occasion glorifying the Queen Elizabeth II, the Queen Mother, in her presence in an accompaniment throughout the Queen's Park to a crowd of 12,000 local residents. As a result of this, the native of Ipswich would uphold the title of supremacy of mayor for the longest duration as of present documentation, being from 1950 to 1973, and would also govern the title of being chairman of the trustees from 1960 to 1970 at the school that cultivated his altruistic ideals. Therefore, James Finimore's altruistic ideologies not only heavily influenced his growth as a person, but his endeavours for the beneficiary of the society directly in correspondence to him, even within his local community. We now correspond from the only existing memorial in eternal recognition of James Jim Thomas Finimore, the Jim Finimore Oval. In doing this, under concluding circumstances of the humanitarian, innovative, and compelling man, it can be expressed that his encompassment of altruism within all facets of his life not only heavily influenced his personal development, but his endeavours for the beneficiary of societies in direct correspondence. His altruism, an ideological continuity of selflessness that would provide moral asylum within his dynamic life, a value cultivated by the unique pedagogy associated with the Ipswich Grammar School, exemplified through valiant contributions that opposed the force of belligerents of the Second World War within a division driven on internal conflict, and epitomised through the tireless progression of the city of Ipswich. A man that defined heroism, one who deserves the expansion of his eternal recognition in turning the sod of the grounds where he battled as a boy anew.